Hi, it's Tom Landry of Benchmark Real Estate. I'm here with a show called Home with Tom Landry. This is a broadcast that we did years ago, and we had a radio show called Home with Tom Landry. And we're starting it back up. You can go on to homewithtomlandry.com to learn more and to see episodes, but this is episode number 1. And we're here to talk about the market in today's day. It is spring 2021, and everything you've heard, whether in Maine or beyond, about this being a competitive market and a very robust market is absolutely right on trend and the truth. So I'm going to get into some stats here in Greater Portland. I'm going to get into some stats specifically here in Portland. And we're going to talk about some of the issues and some of the real examples. So this is a spring 2021 update. And thank you for tuning in. Again, you can go on to homewithtomlandry.com to download this. If you want a copy of the mailing that we sent out, you want to have that sent out to you, you can email us at LandryTeam, LandryTeam, at benchmarkmaine.com, and Maine is spelled out just like the state. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'll start out with just an introduction to the market and just saying to you that it is absolutely unprecedented. If we think about the word last year, probably, and what I coined in my Christmas broadcast and my Christmas letter to friends and clients, is the word of the year last year was unprecedented in almost every way, with COVID, with the elections, with everything else that went on. I'm not sure this year that's coming up. There's certainly a lot of other things that are getting under control, thank goodness, like COVID and like sort of our politics here in the United States. But when it comes to real estate, it certainly is a time that is shocking, hard to believe. You sort of fill in that superlative for yourself. But, you know, we've been talking with industry veterans, people with 30, 40, 50 years in the business, and just about everybody in the business has never seen a time quite like this. If we go back about a year from now, you know, there was a time in Portland just after our governor had sort of shut down things because of COVID, where initially she did not say real estate was what's called an essential business or essential task. Soon after that, and I believe it was the day after, she then corrected that and named real estate as an essential business practice. And unfortunately, the city government here did not continue and to adopt her list of essential businesses. So for about the first so maybe March, April, May of last year, we were shut down and we could not meet with clients, we could not tour properties, we could not list properties. So it was a very stressful time for our clients who were planning on and maybe needing to sell their properties this time last year. Soon after that, probably middle of the summer, things started to loosen up and the market started to pick up. And then in the fall, it started to kick up even more as we saw folks who were in lockdown in other cities or across the country start to think about leaving. And as companies also started to say, hey, we're going to be closed for the year. You work remote, work from home. And then folks started to say, even if I have an escape pod, even if I have a place to go to the next time something like this happens, God forbid, I would have that place in Vermont, I would have that place in New Hampshire, and I'd have that place in Maine, or anywhere that's a little bit more rural versus urban. And we started to see our market here pick up significantly come November and December. We didn't have any expectation that it would grow exponentially from then until now, but that's exactly what's happened. We have seen as much as a 60% increase in sales volume and prices between December and now. And I'm recording this right now, and it's pretty much the middle of April. And we're seeing some unprecedented numbers and really unexpected numbers and appreciation in these last 4 months. I'll get into a little bit of the belief as to how that goes forward and whether that's sustainable. I do have people asking me whether it is a bubble. Should we sell now? Do we think it's going to crash? And I'll talk about that as we go further in this broadcast. So right now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the stats. Professionals consider this an unprecedented, and what I'm looking at is the letter right here that we sent out to folks. So we sent out a Greater Portland letter, and we sent out a Portland-specific letter with stats. And in this, I talk about it being remarkable, incredible, shocking, and the fact of use the superlative you want. I go through this and I say that one thing is past is no longer prologue, or past is no longer a predictor. And that really gets into the idea that even comps or sales that we've used, and in real estate, we for years have looked towards the past to predict what the current market is going to say your home is worth or what somebody may pay for your home. It's very difficult to do that right now because of the market appreciation in such a short period of time. The second thing is, we've seen as much as a 40% increase again, or even 60% in these last several months. So what we're implementing a lot of times, folks, and this is something that sellers should do, in my opinion, is do what's called delayed acceptance. And I'll get into what that means, but it's a way to ensure that buyers coming in from away can see the property and have enough time to schedule, if they are out of state, to schedule to come see it. And making sure you get the best offer versus just the first offer. We're seeing routinely 20-ish offers on a property, and although there is no way to measure the amount of demand, because every agent out there, and there's well over 2,000 agents in the Greater Portland community, there's no way that we can survey them to say how many buyers are you working with that are targeting Portland or Falmouth or these type of places. But by most estimates and by most sort of gut feels, there is probably 20 to 30 people for every new listing that comes out. So we have an imbalance between the amount of demand that's out there, greatly outpacing the amount of supply that comes on. We do anticipate that to change as we go forward, as we look to the summer, and I'll talk about that as we go along as well. So let's get right into the stats. So Greater Portland stats. We, and again, this is right on this document, and you can reach out to me for more information about this, whether it's Greater Portland or Portland. For median sale price, and we are pulling these numbers every single month, and then we look at it for the quarter as well. The stats that I pulled here are for Portland and the surrounding communities. We're seeing a median sales price increase of 27% for this February versus last February. We're seeing median days on the market decrease from 16 down to 7. Total sales volume increase and sales prices to increase, from 275,000 last year in Greater Portland to 372,000. So you just think about that much of a difference, $100,000 increase in this last 12-month period. Number of sales also up a little bit, but not as great. So that really is an indicator that, again, supply may be less and a little bit less as people feel up until now, maybe not comfortable having their house on the market and people having touring through the home. But again, we're anticipating that to change. But supply really has not been dramatically lower, but demand is way outpacing, and much different than we've seen in the past. If I switch over to Portland stats, the numbers are even a little more shocking. For February of this year versus February of last year, the median sale price went up 33%. So to give you a sense of that, and to really, when you think about 33%, it really doesn't really mean anything to me. But when you think about it in dollars, that's really where the rubber meets the road. So if you go from last year at this time, the median sale price for a single family home in Portland was about $345,000. This year, we're at $460,000. So imagine you wait 1 year and you get that amount. The days on the market last year during February were 44 days on the market. It's down to 9 days on the market. Total sales volume that's just a whopping 73% higher. And that's really driven by the increase in the sale price. So the number of sales up slightly, but not, again, the prices of these are going for much, much higher. So therefore the sales volume is much higher. Now I'll switch over to, is this a bubble? I didn't really get into that in my newsletter, but I'll share some of that right now and the idea of this, because I do have this conversation with many of my sellers. And I am a positive person by nature. I think our greater Portland market is very strong and will continue to be strong. I do not anticipate us being in any sort of a bubble which is going to burst. People liken these run-ups that they're unsustainable and these things. I do, however, think that the increase that we just saw is probably something that's not going to continue and to just compound. We, again, saw anywhere from a 40 to about a 60% increase in values here over the last 4 months. And that does seem to be, in my opinion, the new plateau, and we're probably going to increase off of that in a much more seasonal and realistic basis year by year, which is somewhere between 3 and 5%. So we're at this higher price point. Demand will still continue to happen, but again, I don't anticipate another 40% jump or 60% jump in the next 4 months. If we do, then all bets are off, clearly. So I don't think there's a burning desire to say, hey, oh my goodness, list your property right now, or you're going to miss out on things. But I also think it is a very good time to list. It doesn't really get much better, and we're not going to see, in my opinion, dramatic price increases where, goodness, I'm glad you waited until the fall because your home is now worth $50,000 more than it would have been in the spring. So very good time to sell. One thing I have mentioned frequently to sellers is the idea of listing potentially before July. Now, as we look towards this summer, we're already seeing, if you follow some of the trends, that airline travel is up. Bookings for hotels are at record levels. Bookings for parks and national monuments are booked throughout the entire season. So because we have been cooped up and people have not been able to vacation in this last year, and it's obvious, we're going to see people, in my opinion, vacation like we've never vacationed in the summertime ever. So I do think the seasonality that we typically see that slows down come July is going to be exacerbated this year. So there's some evidence that says getting on the market if you're a seller sooner is probably better. Buyers who are distracted by vacation and buyers who are distracted by getting away are not going to be at your home. So there may be a little less of that feeding frenzy that we're seeing right now. As a buyer, switching to that hat and knowing the craziness of this market, we do have several tips for buyers. We have a wonderful team of agents within my team, but also within the company. And we have some techniques that can help you make sure your offer is winning out and potentially is accepted versus the 19 others or 15 others that are presented. One thing certainly is make sure that you are pre-qualified and fully approved for a mortgage. Have your letter to that seller is another thing, which is sincere and personalized, ready to go with your offer. Many of the properties we're selling have been in the same family for many, many years. And if it's close, if an offer is close, the seller's going to sell to somebody whose heart is in it and somebody who loves the property maybe as much as they have. Finally, things like eliminating inspections, things like, which is controversial, things like bridging the gap between potential appraisal. Remember, with appraisers, they have to go towards the past. They're going to look in the past 4 months, 6 months, or a year to determine a property's value. If you're offering more because you're in a competitive situation in today's market and you're going, say, the property is listed at 500, you're offering 550, there's a strong probability that if you're getting financing that that property is not going to appraise. So we're introducing language in our offers and specific language that we can help you with to show that you're able to bridge the gap between a potentially low appraisal and the offer price that you have. It's a tough market. It's a really tough market, and it's a time when you need the best and most qualified agents to help you on either side of that equation, whether you're a buyer or you're a seller. So going back to the seller side, we again are using this something called delayed acceptance, and we've been using it in Portland, which has been a very, very hot market for quite some time, and we started using it in one of the hottest markets really in the entire country, and a place that we've had an office in for many, many years now. It's called the East End of Portland, or Munjo Hill. And this technique is really designed to make sure you get the best offer versus just the first offer. So in the past, imagine yourself listing a property on a Monday, Tuesday, whenever that may be, and somebody coming in day one or day two, offering you full price or somewhere around that. And, you know, I was in the buyer and seller pool before I was in real estate, and I've had that exact scenario happen to me. And there's two thoughts that go through your head. I'm lucky to have that, right? And the other thought is, boy, did I underprice the property? Could I have found a better offer? Could I have gone higher? Well, this is a way to make sure, again, you get the best buyer and potentially the highest amount possible because we're listing things early in the week, and we usually have a tendency with our team to list properties on a Tuesday, one of the best days for people to open up their emails. And really what happens with that is, and you may know this or you may not, buyers are set up with their agents and themselves on various real estate websites with what's called automatic searches. So when a new property matches the criteria that they put in and the area that they put in, they will get an automatic alert to their inbox or to their phone via text, and it will say, hey, a new property has matched your criteria, and then they open it up. So we want that alert to go to them in a day that they're more likely to open up the search, but also in a time of the week where they are more likely to be able to plan their trip here. Now, in our market in Greater Portland, we are seeing buyers come from a host of larger metropolitan areas. And oftentimes these buyers are from areas which the values are higher. So think of Greater Boston, New York, Manhattan, and Brooklyn, Greater DC, Chicago, Atlanta, and then back in towards Austin, and then the West Coast, several cities on the West Coast. So it's become a regional and a national market for real estate as people buy primary homes, secondary homes, and move away from where they have to live or where they've had to live in the past because of jobs and companies to where they may want to live. So we're popping up on those lists in Portland, and therefore we want to market out to them. So when we list a property, they get that alert. It's Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. They can plan their trip up. They can also plan to have their agent do a FaceTime walkthrough. And then offers are due the following Tuesday. So we have 7 days of showings. And what it's been doing for us is it's ensuring, again, that those buyers from out of state that potentially see our prices as very reasonable and some fraction of their values where they are, to come up and make offers. So it's a call for offers, and we typically couple that with an open house on a Sunday and that first Sunday of listing. So what that's led to is deals sticking together, buyers being able to come through sometimes 2 or 3 times, and again, presenting and letting them think about presenting their very, very best offer. We are also seeing those buyers do things that, again, are sort of unexpected, offering as much as $10,000, $20,000, and in some cases even $200,000 over asking, which is, again, shocking because the list prices are already elevated from what they were even a year ago or 6 months ago. So we have lots of techniques that you can use, whether you're a buyer or a seller. I want to talk to you a little bit about seller pitfalls, and there may not seem to be any in a market like this where buyers are knocking on doors and sending letters to owners, literally. And but there are, and I think there are as many pitfalls now as in a normal market or in a down market. So it clearly is a time when this is what would be called a seller's market, when the market favors you as a seller, and buyers are doing really everything they can and pulling out all the stops to make offers attractive. A few of those are listing too high. And there's a desire, obviously, with any of us to sell for as much as we can, and that's understandable. And sometimes when we hear a neighbor or somebody down the street selling for X, we start to pile on to that. Now, there can be a compounding factor to these things, but we need to pace ourselves with the speed of that change. So, for example, if somebody's selling for 500 and you just jump up another 50 and somebody else gets that, but then they jump up another 50 from that. Usually, again, it can take some time to escalate like that. And the risk is that you end up going too high. And in a market that is very reactive and a lot of things are going into contract quickly, if you have a property that's sat on the market for even 2 weeks, it starts to be like, what's wrong with it? So there's a very tight balance here between listing too high and having that happen, and also listing too low. Obviously, we can't predict and guarantee a bidding war, although the delayed acceptance, which I've shared with you in the past, is an important factor in that and trying to get you the best buyer and not have a property linger on the market. But you don't want to list below what you'd accept, right? But you also want to try in a market like this to give yourself a little bit of a buffer on the lower side. So when we think about a price continuum from shooting the moon here on the very high side and potentially sitting on the market to listing under the market, we have a tendency to go on the lower half of that continuum and use the delayed acceptance practice to try to drive multiple offers. And if this is done right, we really are seeing tremendous results right now. And again, properties going 20, 30, 50, 100,000 and more over asking price. What that also does is, put yourself in the shoes of a buyer who feels that they've got anything, right, before 3 or 4 or 10 other people. They're typically going to, what I like to say, behave themselves throughout the entire buying process. If there's an inspection, and again, if there's an inspection, a lot of times they're not even having inspections because they want to make their offer look even better. But if there is, they're bound not to create issues out of it if they feel there are 5 other people behind them waiting to take their place. If the appraisal comes in $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 under the value that they have it under contract, they're probably not going to raise an alarm with that. They're going to figure out how to fund that gap between what they're offering and what the appraisal came in at, because they don't want to miss out on the property. Now, all of that goes away if the property's sitting on the market for 20 and 30 or 45 days. Suddenly the pendulum in an otherwise seller's market turns to, for that particular property, to favoring buyers. And then sellers open themselves up for negotiations, and not only negotiations initially, but negotiations after the fact, after the buyer has put it under contract. Why wouldn't they come back out of a home inspection? Why wouldn't they come back if the appraisal comes up short? So as a seller, you want to put yourself in a position of strength, and usually you do that by listing initially at the right price. The other factors that I outline in my letter is choosing to do a for sale by owner. Now, sometimes in a very active market, sellers will say, why do I need an agent? I don't need one. I'm going to save that commission. I'm still going to sell for the same amount of money. And it's a win-win-win. Well, It's not the case. I mean, it's proven out stats-wise, and it's proven out that listing with an agent is going to get you more than that 5 or 6% or 7% that that agent takes. So it's critical that they help you determine the price, launch the property, and what we call launch versus listing. Again, it's something that in a good market or in a bad market should be avoided. Listing with an agent, listing with the most accomplished agent in your area is going to get you more money. And, let's face it, most buyers are working with a buyer broker as well. So they're touring around, and if they are involved in what is the most important financial decision of their life, most people want to have a guide. So you as a seller are going to have to pay that buyer broker, whether out of the proceeds of your property or getting less money because that buyer is factoring into their offer. You're going to have to pay them 2.5% or 3% anyways. So having your own additional help for another 2.5%, 3%, I'd like to say that's going to get you about 10% more, and I think it's a good call to do that. The next thing is responding to the letter of the day. Now, I have friends and neighbors that get in touch with me and they say, is this legit? So they'll get a letter, and literally it's a letter, maybe not every day, but every week, that's promising something. My parents grew up in this neighborhood. I want to be close to my, in-laws, whatever that may be, or that I'm specifically interested in your house. Now, oftentimes they're blanketing a neighborhood. Oftentimes it's either a buyer or an agent. Sometimes the agent has a buyer that they're representing. Sometimes the agent is fishing for a listing. It's best not to go it alone in these circumstances. And part of the rationale there, again, is to make sure that you're getting the best buyer. And if somebody's knocking on your door or sending you that letter, they are dealing with you as a seller in a one-off situation. If I'm the only one, going back to the analogy before about these bidding wars and 10 and 20 and 30 people looking at homes, if I know I'm part of 20 or 30 other people, I'm bound to make a better offer. I'm bound to feel that competition and know that I have to make a good offer. If I'm the only one because I've sent a letter and I've been lucky enough to have a seller respond to me, I'm probably not going to feel any sense of competition. I'm probably going to come in and offer less. And then again, I'm probably not going to eliminate inspections. I'm probably not going to worry about bridging the gap when it comes to the appraisal. And out of inspections, I may feel a little more entitled versus a situation where the property was fully listed on the market. And again, I'm feeling that competition. The next thing is believing the market is going to keep going up and up. So that's another seller pitfall. As I have shared in the past and in other segments, the market is excellent right now. And although, of course, we can't predict the future, we do expect it to remain stable here in Portland and Greater Portland. But there is a diminishing level of additional appreciation. So we're anticipating things are going to continue to rise in value, but not at the rate that they have in the last 4 months. So sometimes sellers get caught up in this, well, if I only waited, or I'm going to wait, and sometimes they miss the market. So that's just a check in on that. If the time is right for you, well, the market is certainly really good right now. Finally, inaction. For a host of reasons, and some of them can be, well, my home is not ready. I have a lot of folks that say to me, Tom, I've been thinking about this. I know I have to do it, but my home is just not in a state where I want you to come over. I still have more to do. If I've been in the industry for quite some time, nearly 20 years, and I've seen the last crash, right? The lead up to 2008 and the financial crash of 2008 and the Great Recession. I saw folks in 2005 and 6 work to get their homes ready and wait and wait and wait as they anticipated the market to continue to get higher. And then things happened. Something happened in the economy, right? And we don't know if that's going to happen now. But your home doesn't always have to be perfect. And the pursuit of that in the hopes of it being better and being better, creating months and months of delays is probably not a good thing in this market. So the market is so good right now that you probably don't need to do all those things. There's so many more buyers that there's also potential for a diminishing level of return. You do all of them, it takes you too long. We get to the summer, the market slows down. And also you do all these things and you're investing $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, and it may not move the needle that much with the buyers because they may come in and want to do their own thing. So things don't have to be perfect for us to come over and see your house. We can help you with identifying the things that are distracting the buyers, but also things don't have to be perfect at all to list your house. So inaction sometimes is the root of evil here in preventing you from realizing and taking advantage of a really wonderful seller's market. Now, one thing we hear frequently from buyers in a very, very active seller's market is they know that on the other side of the equation, they become one of those buyers. And now they're competing with, again, 20 or 30 different buyers from in and out of state on every listing. So that can be a little unnerving. So how do we go about doing that? How do you, if we know we need to move, right? There's a lot of people that say, geez, I don't need to be in this big house. I know I need to make a change, but I'm fearful about that. I'm fearful of becoming the buyer in a seller's market. I know I'm going to be able to take advantage of it on the sales side, but I don't want to be homeless, or I don't want to be in a situation where I have to move twice or I have to overpay. So there's some techniques that we have, and there's some ways that we can help you with that. And part of that can be discerned by working with some of our buyer brokers, but I'll give you a couple. And one of them right now we're employing is the market is so good that we are saying on the sales side, so if you're selling a property and then you have to buy, that you would rent back, and we put that right into what we're sharing with the buyer brokers and the buyers, that the seller prefers to rent back post-closing. Now, we have had buyers come in and offer leasebacks for as long as a year. It's very, very common to have them at 6 months or 3 months. And oftentimes, and we just had this happen to us, where a buyer came in and said, you can rent back for 3 months rent free. So what this does for you as a seller, and then putting on the buyer hat afterwards, is we like you to close quickly. We like you to, sale of your house to happen in, say, 30 days, because time is not a friend to real estate deals. So we don't like to have that be lingering out there. So close quickly on your current sale, get your money, then you become a very, very strong buyer in the marketplace. Start looking as soon as you're under contract on that property. And then again, you become that strong buyer who can potentially pay cash or put down a large percentage of money. Your home is already under contract and sometimes even already closed. And then you have a situation potentially where that 3 month or 6 month lease back of your current home, where you're not moving twice. If that future home needs work, then you're in a good situation to not be living through the work that home needs. And again, that's just one technique that we're using to help buyers who are also sellers. More can be learned by reaching out to us and working again with one of our qualified buyer brokers. Another point of my letter that I sent recently is the subject of now is the time. Obviously, we have a situation, and thank goodness that COVID-19 is getting more under control in our country as more people get vaccinated. So it's very encouraging, and it's very encouraging for our economy and for any one of us in this country and around the world. What is interesting on the real estate side is are the trends that are driving the appreciation in our secondary markets and our smaller markets going to settle out, right? So we have had an unprecedented drive up in demand and therefore in values because demand has outpaced supply. Now, is that going to continue? We don't know, right? Obviously, we do have a lot of businesses that are saying, hey, right after our labor costs, the cost of rent in one of these high rises is the next biggest line item. And eliminating big offices in big metropolitan areas and allowing people to work from anywhere is pretty compelling. So we do anticipate demand and people who can now live anywhere to choose a place where the lifestyle is pretty amazing, and that's Portland and Greater Portland. So we don't expect a drop in demand. We expect it to continue. However, going back to now is the time, is we do anticipate things settling out as they already are. We're seeing this in our spring 2021 time right now in a host of places across the country in larger metropolitan areas. So the catalyst, if you will, the reason people left these urban areas is getting under control, that catalyst being COVID-19. So as people feel more comfortable in our urban areas, the trend that we saw up until just this happening, where people are urbanizing and people are leaving the suburbs and leaving suburban and rural areas and re-urbanizing into cities, we anticipate that to start again. So what does that mean to you in our marketplace? I think it means taking advantage of a really great market. If now's the time, I don't anticipate it to get exponentially better. I think it's a wonderful time to list as we are in 2021. I think it's going to continue to be good as we go along. But again, I don't anticipate the rapid appreciation we've seen in the last 6 months to again happen in the next 6. So it's going to be great now. It's going to be great in the future. But there's no reason to wait in hopes of the market being exponentially better in the fall or next year at this time. That's my prediction. So if you want a copy of our letter, if you want to join our mailing list, we can send this out to you. We do put out monthly stats, so feel free to friend us on Facebook. Feel free to follow us on Instagram, and you can join our mailing list. You can reach out to landryteam@benchmarkmaine.com. That's the email address. You can also call the office at 207-939-0185. And these segments are available at homewithtomlandry.com.